From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
I think we all have heard it said one time or another that happiness is a choice, and that we can either choose to be happy or we can let all the outer conditions of our life dictate the states of being that we're going to live from. And I think one of the major parts of a person's spiritual path and spiritual growth is this idea of really learning not to give away choice, the power of choice, how important it is to be choosing moment to moment. And that's part of being awake and aware, is recognizing that. When we allow the world and outer conditions and outer circumstances really to determine whether we're going to be up or down, high or low, happy or sad, we are basically giving away our choice. And we are giving away really the power to be present and in the moment and be choosing who we are and how we're going to be in any set of circumstances. It's a very powerful thing to know who you are at all times and to be at choice and at choice moments on a regular basis. Many a person, basically their state of being fluctuates and maybe from highs to lows based on how the outer world is going and the reads that they're getting there. There's a sweet grandmother that telephoned St. Joseph's Hospital and timidly asked, "Is it possible to speak to someone who can tell me how a patient is doing?" And the operator said, "I'll be glad to help, dear. What's the name and room number of the patient?" And the grandmother, in kind of a weak and trembling voice, said, "Norma Findley, room 302. And the operator said, "Well, let me put you on hold and I will check with the nurses station and see about the person in that room." After a few minutes, the operator returned back to the phone and said, "I have good news. Her nurse just told me that Norma is doing well. Her blood pressure is fine. Her blood work just came back normal. And her physician actually has scheduled her to be discharged tomorrow." The grandmother said, "Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. I was so worried. God bless you for that good news." And the operator said, "You're more than welcome. Is Norma your daughter?" And the grandmother said, "No, I'm Norma Findley in room 302. No one tells me diddly about how I'm doing around here." It's a cute story. And it may not have been at St. Joseph's Hospital because they do pretty good work there. But, you know, she wanted to know what her condition was. And it's certainly not to make light of, you know, a hospital or a person that's facing a health challenge. But I use that as an example, really, that many a person lives their life actually dialing up the outside world to get a read on their condition. You know, to get a read on the outer world or the conditions or the circumstances to thereby dictate whether they're going to be up or down, high or low, happy or sad. Many of us are unconsciously dialing up the world and then determining who we're going to be and how we're going to be. Months ago, I wrote down on a piece of paper a title or a topic or a theme that came to me for a lesson. That sometimes happens. It'll just drop in. And the topic that I had drop in for me was on the idea of whether a person is a thermometer or a thermostat. Okay? And I had not gotten around to using that topic and developing it. And then this week, I received from a friend a video of another mutual friend who is actually a colleague. And he happened to speak on this very theme. And so it kind of surprised me. And I thought, well, I'll take that as a kind of a sign that it's time for me to share with you about this lesson that I had in mind. And the name of the person, just to recognize and acknowledge him, is Richard Levy, a great friend, fine minister, Unity minister, and Wilmington, North Carolina. And so I acknowledge and thank him for providing the spark for me to develop my lesson on this, and having listened to his, which was beautiful as well. So basically, the question is, are you a thermometer or a thermostat? Think about that. You know, in our humanness, we tend to be thermometers. And what does a thermometer do? You know, it registers what is going on in the outer world. And, you know, it is always condition-based. It registers the temperature as a result of reading, you know, what's going on externally. And all it can do basically is react. That's a thermometer. If it's hot, it goes up. If it's cold, it goes down. And people live oftentimes their lives as if they are a thermometer. And, you know, they wake up each day and then they check out what's going on the outside of them, on the external part of them. They check the news. They check the weather. They check the stock market. They think about what it is that lies ahead that they have to face during the day externally. And they are up, they are down, they're high, they're low, they're happy, they're sad. They're having all this like a thermometer based on what reading they get externally and is fed to them. But we all have a God within. We all have a spirit. We all have the voice of truth. And that is there to remind us that we are not a thermometer. We are a thermostat. Okay? And what does a thermostat do? It regulates. It regulates the set point. You have, and we all have, everyone has, the ability to turn up one's spiritual thermostatic set point. In fact, that's what we're here to do. That's what our life is about. You know, it's about growing and unfolding. It's about taking charge, making choices, deciding who you are and how you're going to be on a regular basis, not being pushed around by outer circumstances and situations, because everyone faces them. And no matter what it is that you're facing, you're making a choice. You have a set point. You set your thermostat, who you're going to be, and nothing's going to change that. That's what spiritual growth and the path of spiritual awakening is really about. It's being conscious, being awake, being aware, as opposed to unconscious and letting. And when we're unconscious, really, we go on automatic. We go on the flip switch. We become a thermometer. And so, you know, that's what the message of Jesus was too, you know, that we are to turn up and regulate so that we're open to more love, more peace, more joy. And whatever, we are to find out what our set point is in life that we may not be conscious of. And then, having become aware of that, to break through that barrier and turn it up. As Richard, my colleague, in his lesson, he said, we're here to tune in, turn on, tap into, and turn up our thermostatic set point. Okay? So no one can do that for you. Only you can do that. That is your mission. That is your path. Many have had their set point regulated or determined by their past. Something has happened, something has occurred, and boom, they're frozen in or locked in to a particular ceiling by which they can't love more, have more joy, have more peace, whatever. It's just, that's as high as it goes, because they're on thermometer. They're on the basis of being read from the external. Sometimes they're conditioned. It's what's been conditioned in from their past or even their childhood experiences. Sometimes their parents, what they have modeled for them, they are simply unconsciously modeling a continuation of. They haven't really taken hold consciously of who they are and who they want to be. And we can't blame our parents. We can't blame our past, really, because we all create our own set point, and we sustain it. And we have to awaken to what it is and take responsibility and raise it, you see. And so our set point is really, and can be, our amount of love that we allow in, our amount of joy that we allow in, our amount of prosperity that we experience or allow ourselves to experience. Can be like, that's as much as we can receive in. There are those individuals, you know, that have won the lottery. And some of them had nothing before they won the lottery. And there have been some studies where they followed individuals' lives who, in some of these instances, won the lottery. And they came to where they lost it all and came back to the same place that they were. because essentially that's where their set point was in consciousness in relation to what they could be comfortable with having. It's just they found a way unconsciously to return to their set point in life, their ceiling, if you will. That happens for people. And sometimes when we have patterns over and over and over again, it's basically we need to see that we have a set point that we may not be conscious of, but it is set there nonetheless, and we have to awaken and take it higher. Richard gave an example actually of a friend of his who, when he had seen him 2 years prior, he had just broken up, and he had a person leave him, this friend. And he was very down about it. He was very depressed about it. He seemingly couldn't get over it. And 2 years later, he had just recently visited him, just only weeks prior. And upon visiting him, the friend was still depressed. He was still down. He still could not get over what had happened. He was still telling the same story over and over and over again of what happened externally and outwardly to him, that he couldn't get past that set point. His thermostat was stuck. And he had not exercised choice, whereby you tune in, turn on, tap into, and turn up your thermostat, your spiritual set point. And he had not really exercised this divine capacity, this God-given gift that we all have to make conscious choice, to be in the moment, to be awake and aware, to connect with choosing higher, choosing something from our spiritual self, and to remember not to be a thermometer, but that we really were born to be thermostats in a sense. There's a lady named Francie Schwartz, and she, in her writings, she tells about a person that she knew who was named Jerry, and actually, I don't know that that was his real name, because I find a lot of stories that people tell that are true stories, and they always give them a name Jerry to protect the other name. So you Jerrys out there, I'm sorry, but this guy's Jerry also. So she said, basically, Jerry was the kind of guy that you love to hate. He was always in a good mood. He was always having something good and positive to say. And when someone would ask him how he was doing, he would reply, "If I were any better, I'd be twins." And he actually happened to be a manager of a restaurant. He managed restaurants, and it was unique because, as he worked his way up and went into other restaurants, to work, many of the waiters followed with him because they loved his energy. They loved being around his attitude. He was a natural motivator, and if an employee was having a bad day and they would come to him with a problem, he would just tell them to look on the positive side, and he would nurture them through it in a positive way. And anyway, seeing that this was the nature of this guy, Francie, who was writing about this, said she was kind of curious, and one day she went to him and asked him, I don't get it. You can't be that positive all the time. How do you do it? And Jerry simply answered by saying, really, each morning I wake up and I say to myself, Jerry, you have two choices today. You can choose to be in a good mood, or you can choose to be in a bad mood. I choose to be in a good mood. And each time something bad happens, I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to learn from this experience. I choose to learn from the experience. And every time someone comes to me complaining or in a foul mood, I can choose to accept or get into that energy, or I can point out to them the positive side of life. I choose to point out the positive side of life. And he went on, he said, life is really only basically about choices. When you cut away all the junk, every situation comes down to a choice. You choose how to react to the situations. You choose how people are going to affect your mood. And the bottom line, it is your choice. Your choice. You are in power. And it's your choice as to how you're going to live your life and who you're going to be. So anyway, she lost touch with Jerry for a time, and several years later, she had heard that Jerry did something that you're not supposed to do, never supposed to do in the restaurant business, and that is he left the back door open in the morning when he was setting up, and he was robbed at gunpoint by some robbers. And so when he was at the safe trying to turn the dial, his hand slipped off because he was nervous, and the robber with the gun, panicked and shot him. And so fortunately, he was found fairly quickly, taken to a intensive care, and they, or not intensive care, into surgery, and he had 18 hours of surgery. And anyway, after being in the hospital quite a while, he was released, still having fragments of a bullet within him, in his body. So anyway, she was able to connect and see Jerry 6 months after this episode in his life where he was shot. And when she asked him how he was, he said, "If I were any better, I'd be twins. Want to see my scars?" And she declined. And then she asked him, "What is it that was going through your mind as that robbery took place?" And he said, "Well, the first thing that went through my mind is I should have locked the back door." But then as I lay on the floor, having been shot, I remembered I had two choices. I could choose to live, or I could choose to die. I chose to live. And when the paramedics, starting with the M word, medics, para, for some reason, when the paramedics came, they really tried to tell me I was going to be fine. And when they wheeled me in to the emergency room, and I saw the look on the doctors and the nurses after they realized what my wounds were, and that's when I really got scared. And so in their eyes, I read, "He's a dead man." And I knew then I had to take some action. And so there was this kind of big burly nurse that was shouting questions at me before I would lose consciousness. And she asked if I was allergic to anything. And I said yes. And then there was a pause, and I took a deep breath. And then when I said yes, all the doctors and nurses paused to hear what I was allergic to. And I said, "Bullets, I'm allergic to bullets." And when they stopped laughing, he said, "I told them, I'm choosing to live. Operate on me as if I am alive, not dead." And Jerry did live. And thanks to the doctors, thanks to the work of God within him, and thanks to his amazing attitude. My question about introducing you to that individual in his life, was Jerry a thermometer or was he a thermostat? He was a thermostat, clearly, wasn't he? You know? He was not condition-based. It didn't matter what it was. He always remembered in every instance, no matter how severe it was, he had a choice. And that's where his power lay, was with choice, to regulate that set point of who he was going to be. He refused to be a thermometer at any point in time. You know, when we are in a room and we feel a cool draft, we go to the thermostat. We want to change the thermometer, get the temperature different or whatever, and set it. Well, you know, every person is like a fan or a draft. Every person that comes into your life has a draft, and you get hit with their energies, all right? And some, you know, some people you live with or work with, or a relative or whoever, they may run hot and cold. They may be all over the place, or they may not be always too warm and friendly. They may be more cold. But the point is, you have to choose whether as you get hit with those energies, who you're going to be in those moments. You know, are you going to be at the effect, you see? Are you going to be a thermometer, or are you going to be a thermostat and set who you're going to be? Just notice how you may change your mood by virtue of the energy of the drafts around you. The people who are kind of fanning your consciousness with energies that maybe don't fit, maybe don't feel good at the moment or whatever. And the important thing is to realize that you are conscious, and in that moment you set your spiritual thermostat, you have it set on high, and you don't let others affect or buy into where the others' energies are. And so, you know, leaders in the world are thermostats. They're not thermometers. They are poised, they are centered, They know who they are in each moment. They don't go off the deep end when some circumstance or situation comes along. They know there is a path. They're different. Their energy is different. Leaders are thermostats, not thermometers. And they lock into an identity, an internal identity of some kind of a deep knowing that always knows this can be worked through. There is a solution here. There is a way through it. They always have a kind of a high watch. Jesus Christ was a thermostat, okay? He came to raise the spiritual thermostats of humanity, to raise their set point from low to high, to a greater sense of who they were. You see, Jesus was the man and Christ was his thermostat. He had his thermostat set on Christ. And in other words, Christ was the name of the presence of God in him. Christ was the name of his divinity. Jesus was the man. Christ was the divinity within him that he put on and chose to express because he set his thermostat at that's who I am. Okay, and that's who I'm going to be, no matter what he faced. And we all have this Christ within. We do. Matter of fact, some of you are familiar with the writings of Emily Cady. Emily Cady was a tremendous teacher and writer and author of metaphysics and spiritual truth in the 20th century. And one of her books that we like to teach is called Lessons in Truth. But from her writings, she said this. She said, "We all must recognize that it was the Christ within which made Jesus what he was. And our power now to help ourselves and to help others lies in our comprehending that truth. For it is a truth, whether we realize it or not, that this same Christ lives within us that lived in Jesus. It is the part of himself which God has put within us, which ever lives there with an inexpressible love and desire to spring to the circumference of our being, to our consciousness, as our sufficiency in all things." End of quote. So Jesus really set his spiritual thermostat on Christ, on high, okay? And what did Jesus say about this whole idea that we're talking about here today and discussing? Well, remember, he spoke in metaphors always, and we're using the metaphor of a thermostat and a thermometer. And one of his was a gate, and he said, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are they that enter that way. For narrow is the gate, and straight the way that leads to life, but few are they that find it." Now, if you translate that into what it is we're talking about here today, basically he's saying broad is the way to destruction, right? Meaning that we have individuals can be a thermometer. They have a broad fluctuation of high and low and up and down and in and all over the place because they're at the effect of an external world. They don't know who they are internally. They're not functioning from inside out. They're functioning from outside in. And there's a big difference there. They have not set their high point. And so the narrow gate is the straight way that leads to life. The narrow gate, it's like you know who you are. You don't fluctuate too far anyway because you have your thermostatic spiritual set point high enough that you know who you are on a regular basis, and you are conscious and choosing moment to moment from that higher self connection. You remember not to go on automatic. You remember that at every moment you are at a choice point. So let God and truth rule or regulate your thermostat. The Christ within you is your set point, your spiritual thermostat of your being. And it begins with allowing yourself to accept the fact that you do have a Christ within. You do have, as a child of God, this dimension of you that lives within you that has to be discovered and opened to. And as we say, to tune in, turn on, tap into, and turn up that set point to the higher self, the Christ within. Jesus taught and demonstrated that we must realize our unity with God just as he had. And the word I am is synonymous with Christ. So whenever he said I am, he followed it with not I am ugly, I am stupid, I'm not good enough, or anything like that, because that's a low thermostat. He always identified with the set point that he was Christ. And I am is another word for your Christ. And that's why you find in the scriptures where he said, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door of the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection. I am the life. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. I am the true vine. I am. And he wasn't referring to himself, the man, the human walking the earth at that point. He was really referring to that divine connection that he had made as his set point, his I am. And he lived from that. What did the Apostle Paul have to say about what we're talking about? You know, he said, Christ in you, your hope of glory. He said, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He said, don't, be conformed to a world that's so broad and so wide and have its readings tell you who you are. Be transformed by, as Jesus said, the narrowing of the gate that allows yourself to continually be at the point of power, which is choice, knowing who you are, living from that, remembering no matter what it is that's coming at you, to choose higher, choose higher. And so, quiet yourselves. Check in where your set points are in various aspects of your life and where it is. And then try and raise that set point to a higher place. And realize you are not a thermometer, you are a thermostat. And it's time to regulate your set point in your life, to turn it up higher. It's what you came here to do, to become conscious of that. It's in alignment with what Jesus taught. You have to push past old barriers of old set points, become a leader in spiritual consciousness in the world, whereby you make a bigger difference simply by being at choice and in the moment. It starts with a question, what are my set points? And then you narrow the gate and you begin to consciously regulate. Choose higher. It leads to life. Go be a light in the world. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.